The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen. Hello, this is Natasha, and this is a particular favourite with all the creatures who live on the Palace Pond with Prince Bertie. It was written by Hans Christian Andersen, and it's full of the sights and sounds of his childhood in the countryside of Denmark. Some people say that he was a tall, gangly boy with a big nose and big feet. But when he grew up, he had a beautiful singing voice and wrote wonderful tales. The hero of this story has a life a little bit like that. He was known as the Ugly Duckling. It was summer in the land of Denmark, and though for most of the year the country looks flat and ugly, it was beautiful now. The wheat was yellow, the oats were green, the hay was dry and delicious to roll in, and from the old ruined house, which nobody lived in, down to the edge of the canal was a forest of prickly plants called burdocks, so tall that a whole family of children might have dwelt in them and never have been found out. It was under these burdocks that a duck had built herself a warm nest, and was now sitting all day on 6 pretty eggs. 5 of them were white, but the 6th, which was larger than the others, was of an ugly grey colour. The duck was always puzzled about that egg, and how it came to be so different from the rest. Other birds might have thought that when the duck went down in the morning and evening to the water to stretch her legs in a good swim, some lazy mother might have been on the lookout and popped her egg into the nest. But ducks are not clever at all, and are not quick at counting, so this duck did not worry herself about the matter, but just took care that the big egg should be as warm as the rest. This was the first set of eggs that the duck had ever laid, and to begin with she was very pleased and proud, and laughed at the other mothers who were always neglecting their duties to gossip with each other or to take little extra swims, besides the 2 in the morning and evening that were necessary for health. But at length she grew tired of sitting there all day. "My eggs are taking too long to hatch," she said to herself, and she pined for a little amusement also. Still, she knew that if she left her eggs and the ducklings in them to die, none of her friends would ever speak to her again. So there she stayed, only getting off the eggs several times a day to see if the shells were cracking, which may have been the very reason why they did not crack sooner. She had looked at the eggs at least 150 times, when to her joy she saw a tiny crack on 2 of them, and scrambling back to the nest, she drew the eggs closer together and never moved for the whole of that day. Next morning she was rewarded by noticing cracks in the whole 5 eggs, and by midday 2 little yellow heads were poking out from the shells. This encouraged her so much that after breaking the shells with her beak, so that the little creatures could get free of them, she sat steadily for a whole night upon the nest, and before the sun rose, the 5 white eggs were empty, and 10 pairs of eyes were gazing out upon the green world. Now the duck had been carefully brought up, and did not like dirt, and besides, broken shells are not at all comfortable things to sit or walk upon. So she pushed the rest out over the side, and felt delighted to have some company to talk to, till the big egg hatched. But day after day went on, and the big egg showed no signs of cracking. And the duck grew more and more impatient, and began to wish she could ask the advice of her husband, but he was never around when she needed him. "I can't think what is the matter with it," the duck grumbled to her neighbour, who had called in to pay her a visit. "Why, I could have hatched 2 broods in the time that this one has taken." "Let me look at it," said the old neighbour. "Ah, I thought so. It is a turkey's egg. Once, when I was young, they tricked me to sitting on a brood of turkeys' eggs myself, and when they were hatched, the creatures were so stupid that nothing would make them learn to swim. I have no patience when I come to think of it. Well, I will give it another chance, and if it does not come out of its shell in another 24 hours, I will just leave it alone and teach the rest of them to swim properly and to find their own food. I really can't be expected to do two things at once." And with a fluff of her feathers, she pushed the egg into the middle of the nest. All through the next day she sat on, giving up even her morning bath for fear that a blast of cold might strike the big egg. In the evening, when she ventured to peep, she thought she saw a tiny crack in the upper part of the shell. Filled with hope, she went back to her duties, though she could hardly sleep all night for excitement. When she woke with the first streaks of light, she felt something stirring under her. Yes, there it was at last. And as she moved, a big awkward bird tumbled head foremost onto the ground. There was no denying it was ugly. Even the mother was forced to admit that to herself, though she only said it was large and strong. "You won't need any teaching when you are once in the water," she told him, with a glance of surprise at the dull brown which covered his back and at his long naked neck. And indeed he did not, though he was not half so pretty to look at as the other little yellow balls that followed her. When they returned, they found the old neighbour on the bank, waiting for them to take them into the duck yard. "No, it is not a young turkey, certainly," whispered she in confidence to the mother. "For though it is lean and skinny, and has no colour to speak of, yet there is something rather distinguished about it, and it holds its head up well." "It is very kind of you to say so," answered the mother, who by this time had some secret doubts of its loveliness. "Of course, when you see it by itself it is all right, though it is different somehow from the others, but one cannot expect all one's children to be beautiful." By this time they had reached the centre of the yard, where a very old duck was sitting, who was treated with great respect by all the birds who lived on the water. "You must go up and bow low before her," whispered the mother to her children, nodding her head in the direction of the old lady, "and keep your legs well apart, as you see me do. No well-bred duckling turns in its toes. It is a sign of common parents." The little ducks tried hard to make their small, fat bodies copy the movements of their mother, and the old lady was quite pleased with them. But the rest of the ducks looked on, feeling annoyed, and one duck in particular said, "Oh dear me, here are ever so many more little ducks. The yard is full already, and did you ever see anything quite as ugly as that great tall creature? He is a disgrace to any brood. I shall go and chase him out." So saying this, she put up her feathers and, running to the big duckling, bit his neck. The duckling gave a loud quack. It was the first time he had felt any pain, and at the sound his mother turned quickly. "Leave him alone," she said fiercely, "or I will send for his father. He was not bothering you." No, but he is ugly and awkward. No one can put up with him, answered the stranger. And though the duckling did not understand the meaning of the words, he felt he was being blamed, and became more uncomfortable still when the old Spanish duck who ruled the yard butted in. It certainly is a great pity. He is so different from these beautiful darlings. If he could only be hatched over again. The poor little fellow drooped his head and did not know where to look, but was comforted when his mother answered, "He may not be quite as handsome as the others, but he swims better and is very strong. I am sure he will make his way in the world as well as anybody." "Well, you must feel quite at home here," said the old duck, waddling off. And so they did, all except the duckling, who was snapped at by everyone when they thought his mother was not looking. Even the turkey cockerel, who was so big, never passed him without mocking words. And his brothers and sisters, who would not have noticed any difference unless it had been put into their heads, soon became as rude and as unkind as the rest. At last he could bear it no longer, and one day he fancied he saw signs of his mother turning against him too. So that night, when the ducks and hens were still asleep, he stole away through an open door, and under cover of the burdock leaves scrambled on by the bank of the canal till he reached a wide grassy moor, full of soft marshy places where the reeds grew. Here he lay down, but he was too tired and too frightened to fall asleep, and with the earliest peep of the sun the reeds began to rustle, and he saw that he had blundered into a colony of wild ducks. But as he could not run away, again he stood up and bowed politely. "You are ugly," said the wild ducks, when they had looked him well over. "But, however, it is no business of ours, unless you wish to marry one of our daughters, and that we should not allow." And the duckling answered that he had no idea of marrying anybody, and wanted nothing but to be left alone after his long journey. So for 2 whole days he lay quietly among the reeds, eating such foods as he could find, and drinking the water of the moorland pool, till he felt himself quite strong again. He wished he might stay where he was forever. He was so comfortable and happy, away from everyone, with nobody to bite him or tell him how ugly he was. He was thinking these thoughts when 2 young geese caught sight of him as they were having their evening splash among the reeds, looking for their supper. "We are getting tired of this moor," they said, "and tomorrow we think of trying another."